There's a famous epitaph on a gravestone of the poet Charles Bukowski, and it says, "Don't try." And the past few weeks, I've really been thinking so hard about what this actually means. Of course, this culture celebrates hard work, hustle, working overtime, trying harder than anyone else. And ironically, a lot of times when you see successful people, it seems that what they're doing is effortless. And while I am a strong believer in good work ethic and showing up for our dreams and doing our part, I think there is definitely a point where we can try too hard. And I certainly have fallen victim to this mindset where I believe that the harder I work and the more I show up and the more I post or paint or advertise or create content, the better my business is going to get, the better I am as an artist. But the truth is, everything in life requires a balance. And when we put too much emphasis on the work and not enough time on the play or inspiration or community, then of course the scale is going to tip and things are not going to work out the way that we actually hope. I mean, think about it. Let's say you are an employee working for a company and everyone at the company works for 40 hours a week, but you decide you're going to work for 80 hours a week. That might be great for the first week or two, but eventually you're going to end up crashing. Your performance is going to go down. You might even get sick. And eventually you're actually not going to be able to perform at all. Yet so many times we do this in our careers. I mean, even thinking about being an artist and thinking, I'm just going to post more, or I'm just going to do every trick under the sun to go viral, and that's what's really going to make my art stand out. Or I'm going to put out 10,000 paintings, and at that point, someone has to buy one, right? In reality, you will see a lot of successful artists, ironically, maybe have one or two amazing works, and they are at Art Basel, or maybe they have a brilliant show in a beautiful white cube gallery with only 5 works. So working harder, while it is, I think, valuable when done appropriately and when the scale and the balance stays in order, I think there's a lot of value to, of course, showing up for a dream and doing our part. But trying so hard that we end up tipping the scale, becoming resentful, the joy sucked out of our work, I don't think it's productive at all. And that's something that I've really been meditating on. And to be honest, I had to call myself out a little bit over the past few weeks as I am on this journey of sobriety and really trying to stay as present and aligned in my life as possible. I noticed that there were areas where I began to obsess. Maybe it's refreshing a sales page or refreshing your social media statistics or metrics, or maybe it's checking your email to see if anyone reached out, replied, or if you had a sale. We all do this with different parts of our life. Maybe it's in our romantic relationships, or maybe it's in our career. Nonetheless, it's very human to find thinking that we are going to achieve something miraculous just, if we just push a little bit harder, if we just try a little bit more. But successful people or beautiful works of art, they don't feel like the person was trying so hard, Masterpieces written over the decades, over the ages, you don't enjoy them and they're not celebrated because the author tried really, really hard, right? They feel effortless. They feel like they're channeled from another place or through the divine, and they are complete in the way that they are. And sometimes it's almost like a miracle, right? A work of art, a song, a poem, a novel. And it really got me thinking. And like I said, I have absolutely so much respect for people who have great work ethic, and I do aspire to continue to have great work ethic. But I also want to be mindful as to what I am focusing on, right? Because if I'm just focusing on working hard, that's going to result in more hard work, versus if I have a vision of a beautiful painting and a delicious art career and lifestyle, that's truly what I'm after, right? I don't want to create more hard work for myself. I want to create the experience. And a few weeks ago, I was really excited because one of my dear friends, another cat, texted me and she recommended a book, and it is by a Russian author, Vadim Zeland, and it's called Reality Transurfing. And I have been so enthralled by this piece of literature, and I can't believe I haven't read it before. I'm actually actually listening to it in my native tongue, which has been really nice. And there are English translations available as well. And the premise of this book is pretty much, if you're into quantum physics or manifestation, there are a lot of things that you're probably already aware of, but it's written through a really interesting lens. And there are certain sticky pillars in that book that really, really resonated with me. One of them is this idea of a pendulum. And a pendulum isn't necessarily, the idea of something like the highs and lows or the ups and downs of life. That is true, and there are elements of that. But the pendulum as almost like an entity or organization. And some examples of pendulums that exist in our world, according to the author, can be like a war. It can be a pendulum. It really creates a lot of energy. It sucks people in with its negativity and destruction and chaos. Bad news can be a pendulum. The media outlets love to get people's attention and get people riled up. Like, the economy is bad, the government's collapsing, and that creates a lot. And so pendulums can be really dangerous because they thrive off our energy. The more we watch the news, the more worried we become about the news, the more news is going to be out there produced because it's working, right? They're getting our attention. But I was thinking in pendulums in my own life. And one of the pendulums is this idea of being relevant in the art world. And as much as I hope that over the years I became more enlightened, I'm still really human. And I had to catch myself because I noticed that I was getting worried that if I don't have enough shows, or I don't show up on Instagram enough, or I don't paint enough, that somehow my worth and my value as an artist is going to be diminished. And that was a red flag when I recognized that. Part of it was sobriety and just having this awareness of how I've been relating to my art practice and my career, but also some of the reasons and motivations behind certain projects were based out of fear. And I think that anything in our life that is fear-based can be easily labeled this pendulum, right? It takes more than it gives. It thrives off of our fearful energy and, the FOMO, or fear of being left behind or being irrelevant. And in this book, Vadim Zeland talks a lot about, sort of this idea that if we're fighting for our place under the sun, if we are kicking and screaming and elbowing everyone in our world, that's actually something that is not good for us. And it's a closed door, and we shouldn't do that. And he had a really silly example of a person, let's say they're at an embassy and they are about to go to another country or whatever, it is, they're at an embassy, but they're welcome. Nothing's going on. They're just going through the routine paperwork. And all of a sudden the person starts yelling, "Don't make me leave. I just want to stay here. I don't want to be taken out of here," out of nowhere. Can you imagine? But the same thing, it's crazy to think about it in that context, but we do the same thing as artists. I just want to be part of the art world. I don't want to be ostracized. I don't want to be left behind. I don't want people to miss out on seeing my work on social media. I don't want to be rejected. And so even though in reality nothing is happening to signify that we are being rejected or not accepted, we are acting as if we are, and ultimately creating that for ourselves, right? Like, if we're coming at this with a desperate energy, like, please, 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 accept me, love me, like my posts, sell my artwork, that creates a weird vibe where people are like, well, I was going to, but now you're flipping out. Energetically speaking, we might not be actually saying this in real life, and they might be turned off by that, even though you didn't verbalize that behavior, obviously, hopefully, but they might see or feel this energy of chaos and destruction and self-destruction in our case, and desperation, and they walk away. And I'm not preaching at anyone in particular, mostly myself, to be honest with you, because I find myself doing the same thing. Like, oh, I have to paint this many paintings, or I am not going to reach my goal of being in this whatever gallery or whatever career milestone I want, or a financial goal, which then becomes a very weird loop, because if I am focusing so much of not getting left behind, I'm not creating what I want to create. And the whole point of me choosing this path is so that I can do what I love. I can show up and paint, I can write, I can make things that I'm proud of. And when we're spending so much time and energy worrying about not creating the things that we're proud of, not being accepted, not making any money off our craft, like, we're not actually creating, we're feeding the pendulum. So it has been absolutely mind-blowing to read this book. I highly recommend it, to process it. In fact, I listened to it on audio, but I ordered a paper copy just because because it's so good and I feel like I need to underline everything. And the other thing that Vadim Zeland talks about is riding the waves of opportunity, riding the waves of luck. Some call it the bird of happiness or whatever it is that you identify with. But I do love this idea of surfing, right? And as a surfer, not a very good one, a baby interlevel surfer, I imagine that, it might be a day where there are not a lot of waves, but on the day where there are good rideable waves, I am going to ride a wave. And then even if one doesn't come for a bit, I can hang out and I can focus my attention on catching the wave, right? I'm not going to sit and say, oh, there's no waves. I'm just going to look down at the sand. I'm going to keep my eye on the horizon, looking for the wave of opportunity, rather what can go wrong. Same thing with driving. If we're driving and looking left and right in our rear view mirror and we're not looking at the road, it's going to be pretty tough to get to where we're going, right? And also very dangerous. Yet we do this in subtle ways in our creative careers, in our business, and I am certainly guilty of that. And so that's where I've been at. And honestly, the past 4 weeks, just being completely present, practicing, taking care of myself, letting go of any habits, behaviors, or substances that have kind of numbed me or hindered me. And, this trigger warning, this isn't like, a physical addiction situation or anything like that, but just really, really getting nitty gritty with how good my life can get, how good I can feel, how good my sleep schedule is, and also the awareness of what needs to go. And so a few weeks ago, I decided that I really just need to give myself space. It could be months, it could be years, I don't know. But I really want to focus on that body of work that is in my heart, that I've been thinking about since I was in my early 20s, maybe even before that, and to really give it an honest shot, to go down rabbit holes, to get really into tarot and learning about different plants and Victorian meanings of flowers, just random things that fuel my practice in big and small ways, and to trust myself, to trust the universe, that as I focus on the creation, on the joy, on the love, because the frequency of love is so much more powerful than the frequency of fear, right? And it creates results in our life rather than us chasing something because we're afraid of not being good enough. And just really to ride this wave and to trust that the provision will come. So not say yes to things because it's a means to an end, because that feels cheap and that feels fearful to me. And I know it's a really radical thing. And of course, if something in my life is feeding me and paying the bills, I can't just fully let go of it, but I can start to minimize and to make more space for the energy of love and being on the lookout for those waves of opportunity and luck that are inevitably going to come back. Thank you so much for watching. I highly recommend reading this book, Reality Transurfing. I'll link it in the show notes for you, and let me know what you think. Let me know if there's any pendulums in your life that you've been getting sucked into that you would like to learn how to ignore and take control of the beautiful one precious life that we have. I'll catch you soon. Thanks so much for watching.